I also wonder, is there an element of we've just come through Advent and it's not the most joyous, celebrative time, nor is the time preceding Advent particularly eventful, other than you've just maybe finished harvest and you're taking some downtime. So we've got 12 days. Let's pack in as much fun as we can, because soon it's Epiphany and then it's Lent, and Lent is also, it's a long time of reflection and not partying. That's the last hurrah. Just speculation.
Like, let's come up with something so that we can have
maybe.
It could be.
Yeah.
Welcome to Pray Tell. My name is Tyler, and this is Trevor.
Hey.
We're two parishioners here at St. Matthew's Anglican Church in Abbotsford, BC. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about the much overlooked 12 days of Christmas.
Tyler and I are not priests or trained theologically really in any way, but we like to chat, and we just attend here at St. Matthew's in Abbotsford, and we just like to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And we both came to the Anglican Church after years in other traditions, namely the more free church evangelical. I went to Baptist and Pentecostal and non-denominational churches growing up, and kind of discovered the Anglican Church and the liturgy around 2008, but didn't really start going regularly until more like 2010, 2011. So we kind of often will talk about and compare what we see now versus what we used to see and what we kind of grew up with. So sometimes our modern lens is just more of a evangelical or free church lens, which I think is, and I find that to be really common for people to, maybe they've been going to churches in other traditions for most of their lives. It stops at some point kind of being a place or tradition where they want to be, and so they don't want to stop going to church because their faith is important to them, but maybe they want to explore different ways of expressing their faith or experiencing what God has to offer. And the Anglican Church is very different from a lot of those free church traditions, without being, I think some people feel like Catholicism is like, it's too far. You can't go that far.
Yeah.
So we go to something that's a little bit more of a middle ground. And that is kind of the Anglican Church in its pure form is sort of that middle ground.
Yeah. I like to, not like to think, but I feel like in some ways what I grew up in a non-denominational church was just about as far away as you can get from like liturgy and any kind of structure. And it's a big change, big difference being in this environment, but one I really enjoy and find a lot of comfort and freedom in a very different way than I experienced most of my life growing up.
Yeah. Sometimes on this podcast, we have guests come in and we talk about liturgical or theological themes. We've had our priest join us, Father James, once. We've had other priests who attend our church come and join us and talk about other topics. Sometimes we just have other people who go to church with us come in if they have a certain area of expertise. We invite them to come on. So, but today we're just going to we're just going with the two of us just to talk about our themes and our 12 days of Christmas. So thank you to anyone who's come on with us in the past year or so. We really valued having you, and we look forward to having more guests on future episodes.
Yeah. So this week, as you mentioned, we're going to talk about the 12 days of Christmas. So Tyler, did you celebrate the 12 days of Christmas much as a kid, or what did it mean to you? What was it?
Growing up, the 12 days of Christmas was a song that was played that I heard on the radio. We knew that obviously it was a theme that kind of came up from time to time, but mostly it was just how most other traditions celebrate Christmas. You have Christmas Day. That's the day. You get it all out of your system. And then you take the next few days and you just kind of aren't doing much. Hopefully you're at a school, or if you have school-age children, you're just at home with them because most jobs are either on holidays or they're just shut down the office. So that's what it was like for me for the most part. It was just one day, and then we'd often go visit family for Christmas. So whether it was grandparents or aunts and uncles, we'd have a lot of visiting and a lot of playing around with cousins, but no focus on the 12 days of Christmas, that season that goes from Christmas Day being the start of it until you get to January 6th, which is the beginning of Epiphany, a new season. So in the midst there, it's always Christmas related.
Yeah.
Lots of eating and snacking and still playing Christmas carols and take down the tree at some point in January, but nothing specific or pointed.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Much the same. I was actually, I didn't think about it, but I always had assumed, the 12 days of Christmas is the 12 days leading up to Christmas. I didn't know it was the period from Christmas to Epiphany when I was young. It must have been in high school when we read the play Twelfth Night by Shakespeare in English class. That's when I realized, this is something different, because it never came up for me or my family. So, but I think the big thing in that 12 days period, we did a lot of the same stuff, the eating, visiting family, having people over. My mom often would have like an open house or something around New Year's. But the most important thing was the World Junior Hockey Championship that started on Christmas Day or Boxing Day.
Oh, man.
And
Bob McKenzie, take me now.
Yes. Being able to be at home and watch those games at 7 a.m. sometimes or whenever was just the greatest.
Maybe that's the Canadian 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah, I think so.
Could be. And then of course if you're like my dad, you have the World Juniors on, but then you also have the Spengler
Cup. See, that was a bit of a mystery to me because it was European.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then every year my dad would explain to me, as I do to my children now, well, this is like all the best European teams against the Canadian team.
Yeah.
And that was always so strange. And it was not quite as important as the World Juniors, but seemed to have this little niche following.
Yeah. But weird, because some of those European teams will have Canadian players on it.
It was so strange.
Yeah. But great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we get further into talking about the 12 days of Christmas and shedding some light on what appears to be a very mysterious topic, we have a little treat that we have. For those of you who haven't tuned in before, every episode, Trevor and I sample some sort of locally sourced beverage, usually a beer. It's been other types as well, but typically a beer. And Trevor brought this one today. Trevor, what did you bring?
Yeah, so after our last episode recording, I was saying to you, Tyler, and producers, Paul and Melissa, man, I should bring in winter ale, Granville Island winter ale, and none of you had ever had it before. And that makes sense. You haven't lived in BC that long. But I would go so far as to say that Lion's Winter Ale from Granville Island Brewing is a BC beer institution. Every year, especially when I was a younger, young 20s, I guess. Yeah. This is what people in my circles, my friends, we would all look forward to this beer in the fall or like close to Christmas. It's just good. They did change the recipe, I think, a number of years back. So I feel like it's maybe it's again that nostalgia for the older thing. I don't know if it's actually, empirically better or not as good, but whatever. I still enjoy it. So this is a winter favorite. It says, for over 20 years, delicious caramel, white chocolate, and vanilla notes create the perfect beer to enjoy with friends this season. And it is delicious.
Well, let's crack them.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Ooh, it's delicious.
Yeah, it's nice.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
That was the nicest little smile on your face.
like that.
I was worried that it was. I saw on here that it's not very hoppy, but I often worry about beers like this when they're trying to be. I feel like they try to be too hoppy. I don't like that. But this is great. This is delightful. I remembered this while we were talking about this beer, but we should shout out and congratulate a member of our parish, Dick Martin. They're upstairs right now celebrating because he was granted his Canadian citizenship today.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations to Dick. He's been a guest on the podcast.
Yes, he did our baptism episode. Yeah,
that's right. And we're very, very proud of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a wonderful member of our parish and a great part of our leadership team. And we're happy that that event is complete for him now.
Yeah.
On the topic of 12 days, we were talking before about how you kind of thought it was like the days leading up to Christmas.
Yep.
Our family grew up, my parents are both from Newfoundland. Newfoundland is probably even still, like there's a lot of close connection with England still. And my grandparents, I remember my mom telling me that part of how they would do Christmas, they would not put up the decorations until Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And that was for the very real reason that you didn't start Christmas until Christmas.
Yeah.
Now, when I was older, that was not the case anymore. They had, adopted the regular practices of putting up Christmas decorations before Christmas Eve, probably not too far in advance.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing those stories and being somewhat perplexed that they would do that. And then Mom would tell me, well, it's because we just celebrated, it was for the season of Christmas, which are the 12 days. Now, 12 obviously is a fairly significant number within Scripture and within the Christian tradition. 12 disciples, 12 tribes of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think I never saw in any of my research in particular why it was 12 days, but functionally there's 12 days between day 1 is Christmas Day. And then day 12 is the day before Epiphany starts. And Epiphany is the next season in the church year where we take, I think it's 3 weeks or so to celebrate the revelation or the appearance and the show, like when we get a chance to observe Jesus's ministry on earth before we go into the Lenten season and then Easter. So Christmas is a key time of feasting and experiencing the joy of Jesus coming to earth and being able to celebrate that after we've come through our Advent season of repentance and fasting and praying. Now we get to feast. We do that for 12 days. But growing up, that was never articulated to me like that. Yeah. But as I've reflected on it, I think that's what makes sense.
Yeah, my parents, so my dad was like probably nominally Anglican, at least his mom was. And I don't think he attended church super regularly until he was a young adult. And then my mom grew up in a family that didn't go to church. Well, her parents, all 6 kids, they told them, you have to go to church until age 16 or age 13. And then after that, you can decide if you want to go afterwards. But parents didn't go with them. Like my grandparents, they just sent them, told them they had to go. Just sent them. So
as children?
Yeah. I don't know if they went with someone, but my grandparents did not accompany them.
Yeah.
Lifelong non-churchgoers. So my parents, like, for lack of a better word, like church literacy in that regard was they didn't really have a lot because the churches they ended up going to were very non-denominational, right? And so within the church that I grew up in, we didn't talk about church seasons. That doesn't mean people didn't know what it was, but it wasn't important. It wasn't a non-denominational church. It was like, the point was to get away from a lot of that stuff. So yeah, that's, I think played a large part in my not understanding or knowing what it was.
Yeah.
But it, like, looking back, it makes sense, because what we did in that time as a family was doing all of those things that 12 days is meant to do, which is to relax, celebrate, visit family, eat.
Yeah.
Have good times.
So during that season, obviously there's the common themes that we would find within our own liturgical practice. And then I think even generally it kind of seeps into everyone's tradition to a certain extent. These 12 days are intended to be this time of joyful celebration. And so not every single day within the 12 days has a particular significance in and of itself. At least none that I could find.
It's not like the song.
It's not like the song. There's not like day 1 is the partridge day, and then day 2 is the dove day, and on and on. But there are 3 or 4 kind of key saints days within the Christmas season, and they're kind of like stacked on each other. So you have Christmas Day, which is kind of like Jesus's day, for obvious reasons. The number 1 saint. And then you have St. Stephen's Day, which is December 26th. Yep. St. Stephen was the first martyr of the church. So we read about Stephen, the martyr, in Acts 6, I think it is. We learn about he being martyred by his Jewish compatriots for his faith in Jesus and his belief that Jesus is the Messiah who's come to deliver the world and deliver the Jewish people. And he's martyred for that. So there's a particular service within the Book of Common Prayer. There's special readings, special focus, all those things. I believe on the 27th is the feast of St. John, the gospel writer. The Gospel of John is special in many ways, but it's St. John's Day is within that. Not because I don't think there's anything particularly Christmassy about it. It just so happens to land in there. And then there's the Feast of the Innocents, which is
it's the 28th.
The 28th, and that's when we are asked to remember all of the male children that Herod murdered in order to try to kill the Messiah after the Magi told him he was coming and all those things. So that's a day that kind of like stretches, like we're kind of thinking about Epiphany there a little bit, and we're still very Christmas oriented because it's all about, the only reason he did that is because Jesus was born. That day, I often, whenever I hear that story, I recall how the coming of Jesus is characterized often in the Gospels. It's characterized in many different ways, but one of the themes that you can draw on is the idea of the Exodus, right? Jesus is going to be this new Moses figure who comes and delivers his people from their slavery and their oppression under the Romans. And of course, Herod is acting kind of like Pharaoh did in Moses' day, when he just tried to kill all of the male Israelites because they were becoming too numerous. It's not a perfect one-for-one comparison, but I think anyone who is reading that gospel reading or thinking about that story in Jesus' day would have been thinking, oh, well, we've seen that before.
Totally. Yeah.
Not good. But anyways, December 28th is the Feast of the Innocents. What's the other one?
There's another one, and I forget. I think it has to do with the Virgin Mary on the 31st or on some around there, but I might be wrong about that. I was reading about it a little while ago. But then also New Year's Day, is that to celebrate the circumcision of Jesus?
The baptism of the Lord, naming of Jesus. That would have been the day traditionally when every male child born to Jewish parents would have been circumcised and their name given to them.
Right. Oh, you know what? New Year's Eve is the feast of Pope St. Sylvester I, or St. Sylvester's Day.
Oh, yes.
So there you go.
Sylvester Stallone?
Yes.
That's how I remember it.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the Sylvester Stallone of the popes.
New Year's Day is in the Catholic Church, the Solemnity of Mary.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I had that mixed up.
Not something that we don't do that.
But it says in some denominations also known as the Feast of the Circumcision of Christ.
Yes.
And then we have Epiphany on the 6th.
And then Epiphany. And so there's a bit of it's not the baptism of our Lord, like I said. It is the circumcision of and naming of Jesus.
Mm-hmm. So all these little kind of occasions, even though not each day, there's a lot of, when people would have celebrated these more fully, there would have been many occasions in that 12 days to celebrate something. And it would have been more meaningful.
Yeah.
In a different way.
Yeah.
Do you know why there would be a day kind of devoted to celebrating the circumcision?
My first thought is that, well, at its most basic, I think Jewish boys were supposed to be circumcised 8 days after their birth.
Yeah.
And that would be 8 days, that first.
Yeah.
And it's Jesus.
Yeah.
Ergo, important day.
And within, if you remember in the Gospels, when Mary and Joseph go to get Jesus baptized, there was, what was his name? Simeon?
Mm-hmm.
He'd been waiting there.
Right.
God told him, you're going to see the Messiah. You're going to meet him before you die. And he's there waiting at the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you would go
to
have your child baptized.
Circumcised.
Different. Very different. And so there's obviously the significance of that, but it's also, I think in many ways I think it's significant in the sense that Jesus is very Jewish, and that's of course what you would do. He meets the basic qualification of being.
He's a Jew's Jew.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
He's fulfilling those requirements.
And so it's a significant day within the history of the church. It's a significant day for Jesus as a boy in the religion in the Jewish faith. I couldn't articulate clearly why it's a feast day, but it's clearly a significant day within the history of Jesus' life on earth.
Yeah, I would say it's significant, or it might have been a feast because it's one of those significant, as you said, like markers of Jesus meeting these or fulfilling these things that have to happen for him to be a Messiah, because that meant a certain thing to the Jewish people. And if he hadn't been circumcised and everything else that he had done, been presented, I guess, in the temple and all that stuff, it would have been hard. And it still was hard for people to take him seriously. But I think this is like a bit of an aside, but I think when you remember in the middle, if you think about like someone in the Middle Ages, why this might be important is there is a church somewhere in Europe, and I don't know where, I can't remember, but there is a Catholic church that claims to have Jesus's foreskin as a relic. And people would travel and, to go see the relic, and because it's got some kind of mystical power. I'm not sure, but people go to shrines for a reason, because there's something mystical and important about pilgrimaging there. Anything connected to Jesus, physically especially, would be important. There's churches that claim to have the crown or pieces of the crown of thorns or the spear that pierced his side or whatever.
I think it would also be significant when we're thinking of Jesus. We are, especially around this time of year, one of the key themes of the fact that the way he comes to earth is that he is human. And if, like in some traditions, you want to try to show that he wasn't really human, because that's impossible. You can't have deity and humanity within the same structure, let alone a physical structure. You would maybe want to just kind of downplay the fact that he was circumcised, because being circumcised is a distinctly human event. You need to be physical for it to happen. Jesus is not just some quasi-human being who came to earth in this particularly strange or remarkable way. He was a baby, and he was like any other good Jewish baby. That's a boy. 8 days later, snip, snip.
I wonder if there's
snip, snap, snip, snip. You have no idea the physical toll.
I also wonder if there's to whoever it was in charge, the people that settled on that date or any of these other feast days in this period. If I don't know if this is relevant or not, but is there an element of we've just come through Advent and it's not the most joyous celebrative time, nor is the time preceding Advent particularly eventful, other than like you've just maybe finished harvest and you're taking some downtime. But so we've got this 12 days. Let's maybe pack in as much fun celebration as we can, because soon we're going to it's Epiphany, and then it's Lent, and Lent is also like, it's a long time of reflection and, not partying, not celebrating. You obviously have Mardi Gras and stuff like that right before Ash Wednesday, but that's kind of the last hurrah.
That's it.
So I wonder if there's an element of that kind of thought going into when these feast days occur, but I have no idea.
Right.
It's just speculation.
Like, let's come up with something so that we can have
Maybe.
a reason. It could be.
Yeah.
Do you guys know, with the song that corresponds with the season, do you know why those different elements correspond to those days? Does it have any significance in Christian history?
So the small amount of research I did on the song was that some people think that there's some themes that are tied into the 12 days of Christmas, but it's pretty scant. Like, doesn't seem to be much there. A popular theory suggests that the song was used as a secret catechism by English Catholics during the Protestant Reformation, with each gift symbolizing aspects of the Catholic faith. But there seems to be zero evidence to support that.
That sounds like a really good apocryphal kind of story.
Yeah. Because it is an English song. I think the first publication was around 1780.
In a children's book is what I see.
In a children's book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mirth Without Mischief.
Yeah.
That's a great title.
Everything I would wish for my own children. I wish you mirth without mischief. But I don't really like the song. The pentatonics version is
tolerable,
bouncy.
But it's not on your playlist.
No, it's not like Carol of the Bells. I can just play it on repeat the whole Christmas season. It's the actual opposite of Carol of the Bells. It's way over there. I guess one of the other interesting things that, technically, if you're thinking about Advent versus Christmas would be the time when, like, all the Christmas carols, like when you go to church for the couple of Sundays that fall within the Christmas tide, the 12 days, like, you are singing carols, like it's the full treatment.
Yeah, we have our carols service specifically during that time, do we not?
I think we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are some times where we'll do a carol service, like not on a Sunday, it'll be on another evening. And sometimes that gets pushed a little bit into Advent just because so many people go away during Christmas or just don't show up at church after Christmas, after the Christmas service for a couple Sundays. But yeah, there is generally a particular service that's just
lessons and carols.
Yeah. And it's a service that's devoted to scripture reading and singing carols. I don't think there's no Eucharist, there's no sermon. It's just kind of a back and forth between those two things. This is a bit of an aside, but when we lived in Newfoundland, there's this day in Newfoundland called Tibbs Eve. I forget what the roots of it are, but it's on December 23rd, and it's the date that allegedly the men would all go out and drink and get loaded, because the 24th, you had to be with your family.
Mhm.
You couldn't do that. That'd be totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, and that was going to be the case for most of Christmas too. So you kind of had your shot to go out
Have your shot.
with the boys and have your shot. And I knew some when we were growing up there. I knew some of my friends at school who would take part.
Mm-hmm.
Is it named after somebody who's named Tibbs?
I think it's a short form of like tipsy.
Mhm.
I think.
So it's a folk expression for a day which will never arrive. A celebration held on the 23rd of December in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a non-time. Tib was a character in a 17th English play. The character is a loose, moraled woman who was used for comic relief. But you're right. Like that's what it became.
That's what it became. Yeah.
There was no Tib, therefore no Tibbs Eve. To say something that would happen on Tibbs Eve was to say it would never happen.
It's like a Fight Club.
Ooh.
Or you would just not remember it.
Well, I think that's maybe the flip side of it.
Didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
By the way, when I search Tibbs Eve, the first image, I don't know if you guys can see this enough.
Those are mummers.
Oh, okay. Related.
Have you ever heard of mummers?
I think so, but maybe it's not.
So I think this is not just Newfoundland. I think it's also like an English tradition, but I wouldn't be surprised if I found out it was only Newfies that did it. Around Christmas time, people, and this is remarkable that it would ever happen now, people would dress up, but they would cover their heads
Mhm.
to look like, they'd put like a pillowcase over and draw a face on there. And you would go around to people's houses, strangers or your friends or whatever. The point is they didn't know who you were, and you would just hang out in their house. You would sing songs, and then you would be there for a bit, and then you would go to another house and you'd do the same thing. You'd do this for hours.
Kind of like Halloween in a way.
Kind of like Halloween.
They go in your house.
More singing and more visiting. But the point is that you didn't know who it was.
Mm.
And so they could be very free to carry on,
Sure.
hopefully in very positive, upright ways, and sing and without feeling any self-conscious or whatever it was. Mummers. Boy.
Apparently, it is practiced in Newfoundland and Labrador, Ireland, the city of Philadelphia, and parts of the United Kingdom.
Interesting. We didn't talk about this in our last episode, but there's nothing significant about the day of December 25th.
Right.
It's
an arbitrary
It's
day.
not when he was born.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it was, but if it was a fluke. It's right around this time of year, at least in the northern hemisphere, when the days are the beginning of winter, and obviously much of church tradition in the West was developed in the northern hemisphere, when that would be felt for the most part. And so you do have this interesting theme around Christmas time where you have, it's very dark, but then you have this juxtaposition of the light coming into the world, right? Jesus coming, and it's a few days after the longest night
Shortest
of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Shortest day, longest night. And so you have this, but it's started to turn. Right now we're turning and we're going towards the longest day in the year, and Jesus is coming at around that time. And so, I mean, there was other traditions in the Roman Empire. There were other celebrations around this time which focused on similar themes.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire, around the 4th century. Some of their ancient traditions, they just kind of said, well, we're just going to kind of like make them about Jesus now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this time of year. There's nothing particularly significant about it from a theological perspective. There's no need, that day wouldn't have been significant for Jesus's family.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of got shoehorned in later on as part of the tradition, and then traditions were built around it. So there was this idea that it's about 9 months after when the crucifixion would have been, right, in March. So we know that it was probably around Passover, the death of Jesus, and so you kind of have this nice little time period.
Sure.
Fun. And there's other things that we do too. Like there's nothing Christian about a Christmas tree. There are kind of adopted Christian elements to it because you have an evergreen tree, kind of eternal, a symbol of eternal life. It's a triangle, so it's very Trinitarian. Not every tree is like that. So you have these themes embedded within the things that we do. You have, wreaths are circles, which are infinite, and they're usually made of evergreen tree elements. So there's all these little themes that go along with Christmas that there's nothing in the Bible about wreaths or Christmas trees or December 25th. There's other things that we've already talked about, like circumcision of Jesus, St. Stephen, like all those things, the Feast of the Holy Innocents. There's all these things that are within Scripture that are clearly tied to that season as well. But there's nothing in particular. Like we just there's certain traditions that got shoehorned in that we've adopted. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
If they help you think about why we do this why we do Christmas and the point of the whole celebration, great. But nothing in particular that's scripturally significant.
Yeah. One of the things that the early Christian church was really good at doing was adopting pre-existing celebrations, as you said, or traditions, and Christianizing them, whether it was Saturnalia, which we might have mentioned last time briefly.
I don't think we did.
I'm not sure we did, which was right around this time. There was another one called Sol Invictus, I think.
Right.
But like the Yule log is not a Christian thing. That's a Northern European kind of Norse sort of German thing.
Yeah.
Christmas trees, but that's okay.
Yeah. And, that's kind of the fascinating thing about the history of the church is, politically speaking, it was very smart to not, for the Roman Empire, warts and all, to go around saying, no, you don't have to stop this stuff.
Yeah.
You just repurpose it.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't start a rebellion because you're taking away people's Yule logs.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine?
No.
No. You just say that's not how we think about it anymore. And lots of people would have said, well, I'm not changing my beliefs just because now I'm part of the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. But the official story becomes a different story. And as time passes, these new, what would have been at the time years and decades and eventually centuries, they just kind of seep into the regular life and regular beliefs of people. Mm-hmm. But the vestiges of what that used to be still exist. And the reality is, especially in the Northern Hemisphere and in the Western world, there lots of different cultures have these common celebrations around significant times within the solar year. Mm-hmm. Almost every culture has some sort of a celebration around the winter solstice. Yeah. Because it's a significant time. Mm-hmm. It's dark, things aren't growing, nature seems to be at rest in some way, and you're looking forward to spring when things start to grow again, when you're getting ready for the plenty of spring and summer and eventually harvest, because that's what we need to eat in a agrarian type of lifestyle society. And so rather than saying, those are pagan traditions, you can't do them anymore, we're going to outlaw them, they'll just rebel. And if they're rebelling, do you know what they're not doing? Paying taxes. It became a weird diatribe. But
awfully pessimistic.
Paul, it's the truth.
Primarily political.
It's the truth.
It's capitalism again.
It's back.
Beautiful thing. Parliamentary capitalism. But I think that's why we have within the Christmas season, we have some things that are clearly like foreign to what we would have thought that would be going on around Christmas time. Like there's no spruce trees in Bethlehem, I don't think.
There would be cedars. There would be some evergreens.
Cedars.
Pines
Could
are
be.
pretty much all over the world,
We'll
I
cut
think.
that.
But
We'll cut that.
But I think what your point is, it's not like they were cutting down Christmas trees.
No, there was no Christmas tree in the stable.
No, there was no Christmas tree.
And it wasn't like the following year.
Yeah.
When Jesus was 1, they didn't have a Christmas tree there.
Mhm.
That's not what was going on. That took years and years for that to come up, and it was because I think there was a tradition in, maybe it was German or something like that at some point, where this was going on, and they were like, we can turn this into a Christian thing. Let's do that. And we still do that.
Mhm.
And it's great. And my kids love it, and the family loves it. Getting the tree is a big deal.
Mhm.
We can talk about why it's significant for us in terms of a tradition. But there's nothing inherently theologically
No.
significant about those things.
This whole discussion reminds me of, I've seen people who will bake happy birthday Jesus cakes for Christmas. Have you ever seen those before?
Yes.
Like this whole discussion of, this date is not significant in any way other than we just happen to pick it. But it's funny how it's just, whenever I've seen those cakes, I'm like, oh man, I can't imagine myself baking a happy birthday Jesus cake. I would just feel,
Me neither.
I would feel funny.
Or like singing happy birthday to Jesus.
Or happy birthday Jesus.
If that's an important part of how you express your faith, I guess that's fine.
Sure. I just can't do it.
But I think, I think it's actually a useful conversation here to remind ourselves that there are some things about Christmas that are not central to Christmas, even though if you talk to the broader world about it, like, well, that's the whole point. The point is the presents and the tree and Mariah Carey Christmas carols. Obviously, like that's the whole point, and those are like, that's actually the core of the season. And then you say, well, no, the core of the season is something different. It's more, you can kind of think about it more related to what we see within. Maybe you want to just read what the Bible says and say, well, the core of the season is God's coming to earth. His incarnate Son has come. He's come to deliver the world. He's come to deliver the Jewish people from their oppressors. Turns out that he's actually going to do it for everybody. Surprise. And then there's all these other things that get added onto it, like Advent wreaths and candles and all those things that are all, what they should be doing is helping us to remember that. And nothing wrong with remembering, with thinking, oh, it's at the darkest time of the year, and now we're the light has come to earth. Like, that's great, like that. But that's not because there's anything significant about December 25th in and of itself. It's just, it's a theme that helps us to remember what's important. That's great. Mm-hmm. Hang on to that.
What's your favorite gift of the 12 gifts of Christmas?
In the song,
Yeah.
the gift. Partridge in a pear tree, 2 turtle doves, 3 French hens.
4 calling birds.
4 what?
Calling birds.
4 calling birds, 5 golden rings,
6 geese laying.
6 geese a laying, 7 maids of milking.
No, 7 swans a swimming.
7 swans.
8
swans a swimming.
8 maids a milking.
8 maids a milking.
9 ladies dancing. I think 9 ladies dancing sounds pretty great.
I mean, it's a family show, but
Dance, ladies.
10 lords a leaping.
10 lords a leaping for
11 pipers piping
for the ladies.
Yeah.
11 pipers piping.
12 drummers drumming.
12 drummers drumming.
How do you know all of these? Is it secretly your favorite song?
It's not my. I don't hate it the way maybe you do.
Sure. Hate is a strong word,
but it's accurate, is it not?
I don't.
No, I don't know. I think I've just heard it so much, but so my family lives in Victoria, and when we go over for Christmas the last number of years, my mom really likes to go to Butchart Gardens because they have like really amazing lights set up in the gardens at Christmas.
Talk about that place.
Yeah, so, and it's quite close to my parents' house. So, one of the things they do is throughout the gardens, you can look for the different parts of the song. So they'll have a partridge in a pear tree that you have to try and find, and you can keep track of where you find them and stuff. So
is it
no, they're all statues. No, they're all statues, unfortunately.
Based on the episode of The Office where Andy gives Aaron the 12 days of Christmas, the 12 drummers drumming is the best one because that's the best part of the episode.
Not what is it that scratch her up because he puts them in her car? Is it the swans or something?
I think it was the hens.
The hens, one of them, where she says, whoever's doing this, please stop.
So great. Thank you for joining us for our episode about the 12 days of Christmas. For anyone out there who is not sure what they're doing on Christmas Eve, you should come by St. Matthew's, 4 p.m. at 2010 Guilford Drive in Abbotsford, BC for our Christmas Eve service. We'll be having a full service with all the joys of Christmas celebration to bring in the new the 12 days. So come and join us for that. For information about the Christmas Eve service, you can check out our website, abbyanglican.ca, or check out our Instagram page at Abbey Anglican for more information about the service coming up and where to go and how to get there.
Tyler, thanks again for sharing your favorite version of the 12 Days of Christmas by Pentatonics. If you would like to share your favorite version of the song with us in the comments below, please do. We'd like to fill Tyler's 12 Days of Christmas playlist with just as many versions of that song
Wonderful.
as we can get. So please do that. And yeah, thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on our first episode of 2025. Thanks for joining us.
See you later.